As the sun set and the night crept in, Emma found herself driving down a deserted road, her GPS guiding her to a remote cabin in the woods. She had booked the cabin for a weekend getaway, hoping to escape the stress of her job and the city life. However, as she made her way down the winding road, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being watched. When she finally arrived at the cabin, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The cabin was rustic and cozy, with a warm fire crackling in the fireplace. She settled in, making herself at home, and decided to go to bed early since she was exhausted from the long drive. As she lay in bed trying to fall asleep, she heard a strange scratching sound coming from outside the cabin. She dismissed it, thinking it was probably just an animal, but the scratching grew louder and more persistent. Emma got out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and went to investigate. As she shone her flashlight outside, she saw something move in the darkness. It was too fast for her to make out what it was, but she had a sinking feeling in her gut. She quickly made her way back inside, locking the door behind her, and tried to calm herself down. But the scratching continued, growing more intense by the minute. Emma realized that something was trying to get inside the cabin, and she was trapped. She tried to call for help, but there was no signal on her phone, and the landline in the cabin was dead. As the night wore on, the scratching turned into pounding, and Emma heard something dragging against the walls of the cabin. She was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or speak, as the pounding grew louder and closer. Suddenly the pounding stopped, and there was an eerie silence. Emma cautiously made her way to the window and peered outside, but she saw nothing in the darkness. She breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was all over, but then she heard a faint whisper in her ear. "Hello, Emma," the voice whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Emma turned around, but there was no one there. She was alone in the cabin with the darkness and the unknown lurking outside. She knew then that she would never make it out alive. The next morning, the police found the cabin empty, with no signs of a struggle or forced entry. Emma was never seen or heard from again, leaving behind only a mystery and a sense of dread that lingered long after her disappearance. It was a dark and stormy night, and Sarah was alone in her small apartment. She had always been scared of the dark, but the storm made it even worse. She tried to distract herself by watching TV, but the power went out just as she was getting into her favorite show. Feeling uneasy, Sarah got up to light some candles. As she fumbled around in the dark, she heard a creaking sound coming from her bedroom. She turned around quickly but saw nothing unusual. Shrugging it off as her imagination, she continued to light candles. But then she heard it again, a soft whisper coming from her bedroom. "Sarah, Sarah, let me in." She froze, unsure of what to do. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She slowly walked towards the bedroom, and as she reached for the doorknob, she felt a cold breeze on her neck. Suddenly the door flew open, and Sarah was pushed back by an unseen force. She fell to the ground and the candles went out, plunging the apartment into complete darkness. Trembling with fear, Sarah called out for help, but there was no response. Then she heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving towards her. She tried to get up, but her body was frozen with terror. The footsteps stopped right in front of her, and she felt someone breathing on her neck. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then she felt a cold hand on her shoulder and a whisper in her ear. "You're mine now, Sarah." Sarah's screams echoed throughout the building, but no one came to help her. The next morning, when her neighbors found her apartment, Sarah was nowhere to be found. However, the story did not end there. It wasn't until a few weeks later that strange things began to happen in the building. The neighbors reported hearing footsteps in the hallway at night, but when they looked out, no one was there. Some claimed to have seen a shadowy figure lurking in the shadows. The incidents grew more frequent and more intense, and the residents started to fear for their safety. They tried to contact the landlord, but he was nowhere to be found. The police were called, but they could find no evidence of foul play. Finally, one night, a group of residents decided to investigate the source of the disturbances. Armed with flashlights and baseball bats, they made their way to the basement of the building. It was there that they found a hidden room, filled with strange symbols and candles. In the center of the room lay Sarah, pale and lifeless. But that was not the only thing they found. There, written in blood on the wall, was a chilling message. "I have claimed her, and I will claim you too. Jared had just moved into his new apartment, an old building with a lot of character. He was excited to be living on his own and couldn't wait to start decorating the space. He had chosen the apartment specifically for its quiet location, away from the noise and crowds of the city. Jared's roommates had all gone out of town for the weekend, leaving him alone in the apartment. He decided to take advantage of the solitude and work on his new painting. He set up his canvas and paints in the living room and began to lose himself in his work. As the night wore on, Jared began to hear strange noises coming from the other side of the wall. It sounded like someone was pounding on the wall, trying to break through. He tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the old building settling. But the pounding grew louder and more insistent, until Jared was sure that someone was trying to break into his apartment. He grabbed a baseball bat and cautiously approached the wall. As he pressed his ear to the wall, he heard a faint whisper coming from the other side. "Let me in," the voice whispered. "Let me in." Jared froze, unsure of what to do. He knew that there was no one else in the apartment building, so who could be on the other side of the wall? Suddenly the pounding stopped. Jared breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that whatever it was had given up and left. But then he heard a faint scratching sound coming from the wall. It sounded like someone was trying to claw their way through the drywall. Jared backed away from the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that he had to get out of there, but he was too afraid to move. The scratching sound continued, growing louder and more frenzied by the second. Suddenly the wall burst open, and a skeletal hand reached out and grabbed Jared by the throat. Jared tried to scream, but no sound came out. The hand dragged him through the hole in the wall and into the dark space beyond. Jared found himself in a small, cramped room, with no windows and only a single door. The room was cold and damp, and the walls were covered in peeling wallpaper. He tried to scream for help, but his voice was still caught in his throat. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a figure shrouded in darkness. It was a woman, with long black hair and pale skin. She stood there, staring at Jared with cold, dead eyes. Jared tried to back away, but the woman moved quickly, grabbing him by the arm and pulling him closer. He could see now that her skin was covered in strange, swirling tattoos, and her eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. "Welcome to my world," the woman hissed. "You're never leaving." Jared tried to struggle, but the woman's grip was too strong. She dragged him deeper into the room, and Jared could feel the cold, damp walls closing in around him. He knew that he had to get out, but he couldn't find the strength to fight back. The woman's hold on him was too strong, and he felt himself growing weaker by the second. As he slipped into darkness, he heard the woman's voice whisper in his ear. "Welcome to my world," she said again. "You're never leaving." Thanks for watching today's video. Please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It really helps us out. And until next time, stay safe and never wander too far from the light.